And that's the same thing. Okay, I'll give you this piece of land and I'll give you a chieftaincy title or whatever, but you got to bring me all these other people and you got to bring me some fresh blood. You got to bring me some money, a whole lot of money in return for me giving you these titles. And that's essentially what this is. This isn't kindness. This is strategic.
I think our focus, unfortunately, when we get here, what are we doing? You know, it's a group of a bunch of retirees, and then what are we really doing technically to move our community forward? You know, we talked a bit about Naomi's murder and how no one is talking about it, or very few people are talking about it. And I think that's all because at the end of the day, they just wanted to go away, so they can continue this churning out of people. You know, this transaction of bringing people here without making any noise, keeping quiet. Shh. You know, mommy, the king is naked. Oh, shut up. The king is naked. Shh. You know, there's a major problem here. Honestly, there's a major problem here. Who actually keeps up with our information? That's why I've been saying you got diaspora groups here, but when something goes down, who actually steps in on your behalf? Who is reputable enough and accountable enough to step in on your behalf?
Welcome back, everyone. This is another episode of Griot of the Diaspora. I'm your host, Nakaira G, and today we have a guest by the name of Inez. She lives in Cape Coast, Central Region, Ghana, and we are going to be having a very, very real conversation. We're going to just kind of talk on being a woman in Ghana. We both have similar experiences being in Ghana prior to the year of return. And so as you guys know, I've been interviewing a lot more people who have pre-year of return Ghana experience today with the spotlight that is now on the Black American community, pros and cons of that. So, hi, Inez. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Like I said, the comments have turned into they're going to do Liberia again. We need to get them out. They're going to take over. And I'm just like you said, we don't control those things. The diasporans who have created real estate housing developments that cost over $50,000, $75,000, right? We can name those people, right? They're on Instagram.
It's not that many.
They're very big people. Wodamaya has interviewed them. They have that but it's not hundreds of them. It's not 20s of them, I don't even think, right? Like I'm very aware of like Kofi Anku, Dre Taylor. You know, there's also another African American woman who did this before them and built like 400 homes that Wodamaya interviewed, right? So it's like, and then with the most recent one with Sombra City, with the co-founder of Afro Future and the Ghanaian real estate development, who is actually in charge of that development, but they brought it to the Black American guys, Earn Your Leisure. But because the Earn Your Leisure guys are marketing it, everybody thinks that they are building a Black American community. And so when that announcement came out about Sombra City, that was when I saw a lot of the Liberia accusations, the gentrification, why do they need to come to Ghana and live amongst themselves conversation. Even though there are already wealthy neighborhoods in Ghana full of every other ethnicity other than an African, right? That already exists. That already exists, right? There's already gated communities full of white people. There's already gated communities. Yeah, those places already exist. There's already gated communities with only Indians in there. There's already gated communities.
Literally.
No, yeah, this isn't conspiracy. Like this already exists in your country.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
there's this concept that when Black Americans are doing it, it's all of these things. And like I said, and my first interviews in Ghana was in a Cebu. So I have been doing that follow up with a Cebu because those were my initial videos. And so I still get messages when these articles come out about a
Yeah.
Cebu because it's like, okay, because I did those initial ones, I do want to follow up, but I'm also noticing like, it's a lot of miscommunication, but it's also a lot of propaganda that's happening as well, right? And
Yeah.
so, and I have a few other people that'll come on to talk about, a Cebu more directly, but I'm just seeing a lot of these articles come out,
Yeah.
specifically these white-owned, European-owned, right? Publications that are coming out. I believe there was the New Yorker, Al Jazeera, BBC, DW, a lot of global international outlets
Yeah.
that have
Media
all,
outlets. Yeah.
yeah, that have all ran with the narrative of Black Americans in Ghana is hurting the local people.
Well, see,
So
this is where I've always even asked other people is how do you get because to me, if you want to talk about media and we need to have other voices. And so I always said to myself, like, how is it there? How are they choosing these people who are so-called supposed to be representing a particular community? Because like you said, Tasano areas, there's a lot of Indians over there, cantonments, East Legon. Everybody loves using blacks as a scapegoat. It seems like no matter where we go, the FBA community, wherever we are, we get blamed for everything. But again, no one really wants to address the big elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is that we don't wield that kind of power here. We just don't. We are not the chiefs of these lands. We're not the custodians. We're none of those things. So, who owns the land? And if we want to start getting technical and talk about who is doing what, then let's do that. But it's easier to just blame a foreigner instead of taking accountability for. I mean, Ghanaians in the country here in general is known for not taking accountability, which is part of the reason why the country is going through so many issues, refusing to stabilize the cedi against the dollar, refusing to build plants where they manufacture their own goods so that the products can stay with it, create jobs within their country and stay within their country instead of importing all of these other things from other, like toothpicks. You know what I mean? Something as silly as toothpicks. You're importing your GDP is how much for toothpicks? Like what? At the end of the day, I'm about problem solving and solutions instead of focusing all this energy on blame. And I notice here people love spending time after time after time. All the time I hear people blame, 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 blame. But when do you fix anything? When do you fix these nasty little dirty, stinky little gutters? When do you provide actual, proper walled toilets for women? And so we're not out here squatting, and the men are just sticking their things out in the wind. How about we get some solutions? The road to Accra from Cape has been working on even before this initiative to go from Cote d'Ivoire to Lagos. Before
yeah,
that, we've been waiting for this expansion for how many, like a decade, over a decade now.
yeah.
So, I mean, now you want to expand from Cote d'Ivoire to Lagos, and you're still not done. I mean, let's look at how long it's taking just to get to Accra every day. We're still taking more than 4 hours to get there from here. You know what I mean? So let's focus on things that we can actually put energy into fixing. But when you start doing that, then all of a sudden, on whole show, mommy, auntie, exercise patients. Oh, like, I mean, I'm trying to be funny here. It's too much talk and not enough action here. It's all talk and not enough action. So for me, I've lost the patience. Honestly, I've lost so much patience with people because I'm not new to I don't even say black nationalism, but being aware of all of the things that are going on around me and needing to have some sense of urgency. And to me, I feel like that's what's missing. We need people who are in positions of power to share that same enthusiasm and the ability to move forward with a sense of urgency instead of all this talking. Listen to one another, sit around, and I can't. I'm not able to manage that. I lose the patience really quickly because we're desperate for action here. Desperate.
I agree. And so even like my last question on this particular topic, we all seen I Shall Speak come to Ghana. And we seen, the before he left, he was, supposedly given a passport or citizenship. And then shortly after that, we saw the president of Ghana say that Ghana hasn't received this type of global attention and thanks to I Show Speed. But how does the celebrity marketing of Ghana kind of affect you guys?
I definitely feel like celebrity marketing in general is unfair to the lay person or the average person, because they're going to be treated completely different than you and I would be, unless you have some type of status. And then there's also the issue of us being women. So, because this is a patriarchal country, we're going to be treated basically how the women they've been socialized to treat their women or women in general. So there's a whole different dynamic at play if you're not aware of what you're getting into. You know what I mean? Especially with us coming from the West, if you will, where we're coming from, we've been socialized where, I mean, I still feel like America is kind of patriarchal, yeah, but in a sense, I still have a voice. I can still say certain things and people don't fall apart and get all huffy and whatnot. But here, we're in a totally different dynamic, and so you're selling a dream to people that technically they'll never experience that. It's Popcorn, if you're familiar with the reggae artist, he was here as well and got installed. And I say, well, and I was like, what kind of Ross plot? I was just laughing because I was like, so you're bringing in all of these people and you want them to lead you, but lead you where? I get philosophical sometimes, so I have to catch myself. But like people love talking about stewardship and leading, but where are you leading people? And how are you qualified to lead? Who made you qualified to lead? But at the end of the day, even with them coming here, because initially what ends up happening is you bring in this person, and now they're going to be responsible to bring in their friends and their family members and all of these other people. And once those people come, will they get the same treatment that you got? And the answer is no. We already know the answer is a big, fat, emphatically no. And that's where all the problems start. I forget the rapper that came some years ago. His name will probably pop in my head, but he came some years ago and somebody stole his phone, and he got his phone back within a matter of TikToks.
Oh yeah, Meek Mill.
Mm-hmm. Got his phone. I mean, literally back in TikToks. The average person, it sucks to be you. You're not gonna get your phone back. It's hard. You know what I mean? The problems on the ground are real, and I came, of course, like I said, before the Michael Jai Whites, before the guy that's Boris Kojo, before T.I. I was here before all of that. So the marketing, the hyper marketing that they're doing right now, yes, they can talk about, even if you want to bring up Idi Amin, when he ran all the Asians out of East Africa, we can bring all of those things up. But the reality is, people, again, focusing on blaming folks, or how do we actually get some accountability for all of these actions? There's so much work that needs to be done here. And I feel like there's opportunities for these things to be done. But nobody really wants to do the work. So essentially the hyper marketing is coming from them wanting to be able to get quick money. That's what it boils down to at the end of the day, is how can we just get people in here, flood people in here that's going to spend money, and we'll deal with the rest later on. And the rest later on never gets sorted in the wash, if you will. It's just another person that, fell victim and sucks to be you. That's really what it is. Let's get as many people in here that's going to come and just dump money, and we'll just roll around in it like Uncle Scrooge until we can't anymore. They need fresh meat. That's all that is. Hyper marketing, get the people in here. It's like Emmys or Grammys. You're Gucci, this one's Cartier, this one's whoever, and they're trying to get someone to, show off their jewels, and maybe I'll give you this piece of jewelry, in lieu of you bringing me new customers, and that's the same thing. Okay, I'll give you this piece of land, and I'll give you a chieftaincy title or whatever, but you got to bring me all these other people, and you got to bring me some fresh blood. You got to bring me some money, a whole lot of money in return for me giving you these titles. And that's essentially what this is. This isn't kindness. This is strategic. That's how I see it. There's supposed to be a transaction. There's supposed to be reciprocity, and we're not getting our, it's like they haven't show me yours and I show you mine. But the problem is we're showing ours first, and then they run off with the goods and never to be seen again until, and we're unable, because we're on their turf, we're unable to hold them accountable because they just won't be. They'll just disappear into the wind each time.
And I think that that's important to say because, for the people who say that that they fear Liberia is going to happen by the Black Americans, even when they receive citizenship in Ghana, do not have the ability to enter into politics.
Yes.
The most that you can do is vote.
Yeah.
You cannot become a politician. And so
I don't think we came over here to be politicians anyway. Like, I haven't met anybody over here. I met a lot of us. We didn't come over here to be nobody. I certainly didn't. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the conversation now because locally in the local government, the Ghana government is working towards deciding if they will allow dual citizenship holders to still run for office. But the conversation is more so about the Ghanaian diaspora who have multiple passports out in the West and things like that, and as well as other Africans who
it's
have.
interesting that they can go to other countries and represent, right? Because at the end of the day, you should be allowed to represent yourself, your country, your nation, your people. They go into the Olympics, they represent their countries, their nations, whomever they choose. So why is it that this is such a far-fetched concept to get representation for oneself? I'm not saying no, make everybody make all these new positions where we can have a ton of representation, so to speak. But you need someone, clearly, when we look at what's going on here, we need someone that's going to be upfront, approachable, but also willing to dive into the things that are affecting and ailing their communities. And the best way to do that for any community is to have representation. The Somalis have representation in the US, Ghanaians have representation in the US, everyone else does. So why is it even being an issue? Why is it even an issue? That's the comical part. It's like we should be, like I said, again, focusing on things that can actually move us forward, move the needle. And I find that being here, people don't really want the change that they say that they want. They like talking about it. And then they like to be able to blame one another when things don't go right. This party versus that party, or this tribe versus that tribe. But at the end of the day, nothing moves forward. Because again, the Ghana economic status or situation is not because of diasporans. I have no control over how much they charge for petrol. I have no control over how much they charge for something in Melcombe or ShopRite or whatever. Little old me, foreigner, I have no control over those things. Those things are determined by so many other factors that's way, way, way bigger than us, right? So again, I just think that I think our focus, unfortunately, when we get here, what are we doing? It's a group of a bunch of retirees, and then what are we really doing technically to move our community forward? We talked a bit about Naomi's murder and how no one is talking about it, or very few people are talking about it. And I think that's all because at the end of the day, they just want it to go away so they can continue this churning out of people, this transaction of bringing people here without making any noise, keeping quiet. Shh. Mommy, the king is naked. Oh, shut up. The king is naked. Shh. There's a major problem here. Honestly, there's a major problem here, clearly, with how women are being treated when we get here, single women, single Black women especially, and how the men are maybe taking advantage of a system where the women have no income or low income and are exploited. Those things, of course, people don't like talking about because maybe it's a sore subject. Sex tourism obviously is a problem. But when you start talking about sex tourism versus someone actually living here, then it's not necessarily sex tourism, it's just exploitation. But I think there's so many things that people are taking advantage of, especially the men coming in and engaging in cheap sexual relationships with women, all these things. And I don't mean to point out and highlight it and talk about one particular group, but when we start to look at the issues of the diaspora on the ground,
I mean, I'm disappointed that Huya and I are usually the only ones at Naomi's murder trial proceedings, which will be taking place next week again, the 18th. So it's usually just she and I at these hearings. Granted, they're not making much movement in the case, but the fact that everyone is coming and doing his or her own thing as if we're not a part of a community, in order for us to be taken seriously, we need to move in accordance. We need to move a certain way, and that would assist in that. And but when you get here and you see the people are just having freak fest, it's kind of like Woodstock or something. All of a sudden, everybody's just doing their own thing and getting high and enjoying all the cheap sex. Then what do you really have? There's no community. There's no community whatsoever. So you just have people out here kind of willy nilly.
Yeah.
And
And I really want to talk about that. Like, and that's a really good transition as well, because, being a woman, younger or older, I think that we all share a lot of the same experiences. Um, but because, the first time I came to Ghana, I was 20 years old. I also turned 21 in Ghana. The first time I went to Ghana was for a year because I was studying abroad. So the first time I came to Ghana, I was there for 12 months in school, and so it was in my orientation with my program director, with our California program. She told us straight up, Americans have the reputation of being promiscuous and, and all these other things and stuff like that. And so since then, I've always been like, okay, this is interesting. There's this the Americans are promiscuous. Okay, that's
yeah,
that's interesting. Okay, let's
it's interesting how that people tell you that.
but who are the Americans with like so it's
Promiscuous
like
with.
okay, right, because you very rarely see Americans with each other, which
Right.
is a whole nother conversation.
Right.
So what I find really interesting in specifically when we talk about what happened with Naomi, so for people who are watching and may not know about this story, back in 2024, an older woman who was actually only in her 60s, even though it's been reported that she was older. She was only in her
That she was,
60s, I believe, or
yeah,
late
her
50s.
80s. Yeah.
Yeah, she was in her I believe, early to mid 60s. Her name was Naomi. She also identified as a Black Hebrew Israelite, and
Yeah.
she was murdered at her home and found almost buried behind her house in her backyard. And
Yep.
so I was introduced to this story by someone in Cape Coast and who had found out about this situation, and they notified me really in a panic, like, you got to be careful. And they were really upset that this happened. And so when I learned a lot more about Naomi's case, I was juggling a lot of different things. I was taken aback at the fact that it happened, the way that
Yeah.
it happened. Um,
Yeah.
but I was more so taken aback by the silence. For Ghana to be the funeral capital, there was no funeral. For
Right.
Ghana, for Ghana to be the place where everywhere you go, there's a poster of someone who passed, there was not
Absolutely.
one.
1 week celebration, 1 year
There was not
anniversary,
one. And
nothing.
for her to be a Black Hebrew Israelite, there was no
Yeah.
support.
Yeah.
And so that I paid attention to those things in particular
Yeah.
because I see a lot of organizations, diaspora organizations, who say things like, if you're not paying membership with us, then you on your own, and things like that that have been recently said in some of these chats and sessions and things like that.
But the thing is, even when you're paying membership fees, you're still on your own. So what exactly are you gaining?
Rest in peace to
What are
Crystal
you gaining?
Farmer as well.
Yeah.
People who I know that were very well known in these communities and organizations. And my thing with the Naomi situation, like I said, was one, I was really disturbed by the way that one, when I saw her story talked about online, it was only by men, and all of the men took the word of the murderer. I found that to be extremely problematic because I watched people on their YouTubes make videos You can see it in their face, how excited they were to accuse Naomi of being an
Yes.
older woman who has sexual deviances. You can
Yes.
see it in their face because they
Absolutely.
literally said in their video,
And they justified it based
oh
on that.
yeah,
Like, oh,
yes.
because she's out here being promiscuous and sleeping with these young boys, it was her fault because such and such and such and such. And I was like, you guys didn't know her. So I was like, I don't believe that. And I was like, but even if she were dating a younger guy, what does that have to do? You have murdered somebody. What does
And
that have
so
to do with her?
let's break that down, right? Because age gap relationships in Ghana I thought was okay.
They tell
Child
you that.
marriage happens, right?
They tell you that it's okay when it's a foreigner and a local or someone that's African. But the truth of the matter, you've been here long enough, it's actually taboo when you look at it from a local perspective. They frown upon, they do frown upon older women and younger
Unless
men.
it's a child marriage and it's a young girl being married off
Right.
to a man. But if it's a older woman doing that with a younger boy,
But
that is
for
when
a
it's frowned upon.
woman, if she's considered a big woman, but for a big woman, as they call us, oh, big woman, big mama, and all of that, yeah, you look bad, lack of better terms. We look some type of way when we're dealing with younger men. And I'm at, like, perfect example. I'm near the front line area of Cape Coast. This is where all boys come to play and come to look in, that's going to somehow take them to America and help them. This is the place where people come. So, but I thought that was, how convenient was that narrative? And that guy, I'm sorry, most people who were online, they never had a chance to meet this woman. And if you've seen my video that I did about her, for me to have seen her like the week before she was murdered, I was like, what? It still bothers me. But what people don't know is that because they're not coming to the hearings. See, that's the thing. They're not coming to the hearings. And they haven't shown them in court openly. But because I'm sitting next to the attorney general, most of the time when we go into chambers with the judge and we're going back and forth over these things, we're passing over the exhibits to see her. She was bludgeoned to death. Like, it gets me emotional because the guy hit her in the back of the head, what they call a candelabra, which is essentially a candle holder. But when you have a situation with bludgeoning, they have to shave your head, you know. And it's weird because I remember the scripture saying something about the woman's hair is her glory or something like that. And it was weird how that was the scripture that came to me when I saw her with no hair. And they had her laying there. And I was like, my sister had a head full of curly hair. She had natural, you know what I'm saying? So to see her laying on her side, the way they had positioned her and shaved her head. And I was like, why did they shave her head? Like, why would you disgrace my sister like that? And I remembered he had bludgeoned her. So they had to look for the indentations for where he had hit her in the back of the head with this candelabra and rendered her unconscious. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, wow. Like, I can't speak for everybody else, but violent deaths are an issue. You know what I mean? But to bury her behind her house. So what were you planning on doing? Moving your friends and the family in? If you hadn't already, like, to this day, I still don't know who's living in her house. I don't know where her cars are. People had said, oh, even some officers I talked to said they had given the keys and all of that stuff to the people at the embassy. I don't know that. But what I've seen, even with Chris's stuff, when Chris was murdered, I feel like Chris was murdered. I can care less what anybody else tells me. But what happened to all of his stuff? What happened to all his stuff? So we got people that's coming here and either have belongings when they came or buy things. Supposedly somebody tried to take off with his motorcycle when all of this went down. He had a motorcycle. And I guess one of the police officers, somebody tried to take off with his foot. That's what I'm saying. Who actually keeps up with our information? That's why I've been saying, you got diaspora groups here, but when something goes down, who actually steps in on your behalf? Who is reputable enough and accountable enough to step in on your behalf? But at the end of the day, like I said, she had a home. She had 2 cars. Who's living in her house? Where are her cars? And to this day, like I said, they still are working on picking a jury for this case.
Luckily, the guys are still locked up. Luckily. But I truly believe if Akuya and I weren't going to these hearings, they would have found some way to Fadango do whatever nonsense that they do, and they'd probably be walking around right now. I really believe if there were no eyes on this, they'd be walking somewhere right now, chilling.
You know, this is really disturbing, because like I said, when I when I went down to Cape Coast the day that I heard that that this woman had been found, more so she had been found at that point.
Yes.
And I had never met Naomi, had never seen her. But she's a woman, and that was enough for me.
Yeah.
And to get there and to find out that this is Central Region where this has happened, this is Mina where this has happened, where there is a large diaspora community there. Like I said, she is a Black Hebrew Israelite. There's a
Yes.
large Black Hebrew Israelite community there.
Yeah. Yes.
Um, no funeral,
And they're quiet.
no memorial,
Quieter than church mouse.
no poster, no mentioning, no ashe, no libations, no let's go to the ocean. Everybody lives by the ocean when you live in Cape Coast,
Right.
Elmina.
Yeah.
Nothing. No, let's wear white. Nothing. I stayed in Cape Coast for about 72 hours, because there was supposed to be press conferences that were going to happen to have this conversation. And so that's how I met with the U.S. Embassy representatives who told us what actually happened. So what you're saying is also what I was told. They saw multiple head wounds.
Yeah.
They also confirmed that it was impossible for Naomi to have had this, this relationship that they claimed. And the reason why I
Yes.
wanted to talk about this particular part of her case is because it ties into what we were talking about earlier about the lack of accountability. I
Yes.
want people to understand that Naomi was murdered because someone wanted her laptop and her car.
Yes. Cars. She had two cars. It was two cars.
Material things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was also brought to my attention that the person that murdered her was somebody that Naomi had paid to do some housework with her POP ceiling.
Yeah.
She had previously paid. The work was done. There
He
was
didn't owe.
no
She didn't owe him
issue.
any money.
She didn't
She
owe
didn't
any
owe him any
money.
money.
Everything was done. But what happens, what a lot of people don't want to talk about, what happens is sometimes, a lot of times, when you give that job, you give that money, if you may not know as the diasporan, but more than likely you probably overpaid. And when someone thinks that they got you, they now feel entitled to everything else you have. From my understanding, I was told that after the payment, then the questions of, can I have this? Can I have this? Started coming. Naomi said no. All of a sudden, attitudes and behaviors changed from this individual. And like I said, from my understanding, it is very clear that Naomi was murdered because some person that she paid to do work for her house
Yeah.
wanted her material things. And because she said no, they felt like her life didn't need to exist. I want to
Yeah.
make that very, very clear for people because, like I said, to see a bunch of men get online and be excited to be able to talk about Naomi's situation because they thought that she was an older woman dating a young guy. That was not the case. And it's also very disgusting, but it's a clear representation of actually what it's like to be in Ghana for a lot of women is
Yes.
they will be very quiet. The men will be, and I'm talking about diaspora men. I'm being very
Yes.
clear. I'm talking about
Yes.
diaspora men will be
Yeah.
very quiet on every other issue. But the moment that they can say, oh, look at what they will use that. And I think that that's so sad. We have to be very honest about these things because sexploitation is a very big issue. We saw that happen with the Russian man in Ghana, right? We
Yes.
saw that, right? But I
Yes.
think I think what scared me was two things. What scared me was that the murderer knew to say that they were in a relationship. because
Yeah.
he knows his country. He knows, regardless of they saying that he's Togolese and all this other stuff. I
The
don't care.
moment they say that, then they feel like, oh, well, it's okay.
I
He had
don't care.
access to her because they were going to get married and all that. I was like, if they're getting married, then why would he kill her? He was going to inherit everything anyway. So why would you? I mean, that
But
doesn't,
he
that to me
knew
makes
to
no
say
sense.
that. He knew to say that to a male officer. He knew to say that because obviously, once you say that you guys were in a relationship,
Right.
the only voice that's going to be heard is to come from the man.
Yeah.
So
And
that gives,
possibly she's dead, so she can't defend herself. You know what I mean? So,
but that gives evidence of what we're talking about, that there's
yeah.
already a culture that exists. There's
Yeah.
already a subculture that exists,
Yeah.
that as diasporans and then as women, we are coming into, and the only way for you to learn that these things exist is to actually be in it. Because what one thing that the YouTubers ain't talking about online is this type of behavior. They're not
Yeah.
talking about what it's really like you said earlier, the culture of lying, the culture of pretending, the culture of fake kindness. Like, they're not talking about that on YouTube. They're talking about, yeah, I
No.
bought my land. Yeah, come buy land. That's what's being said on YouTube. But
Right.
the everyday life of just going to the market, saying hi to somebody, being nice to somebody, the consequences that come from that as a woman.
Say that again. The consequences, baby. They, hey,
Just
if you
being
understand what that
nice,
means,
being
mm,
polite,
mm,
responding back with
mm,
hi, I'm fine. The
no
consequences that literally
consequence.
come with that,
Mm,
no one
yeah.
is having that conversation and no
No.
one is telling you about that. And so what
And
made
then
me
they'll tell you that, oh, well, you just are not free. Oh, you're just mad, or you just this. You know, there are severe consequences. I mean, you've talked about it before, and people don't talk about the stalking aspect of being a foreigner here. The sheer fact that I don't believe there's a potential for you and I to blend in as women. You're pretty. I'm considered pretty. The fact that we're even pretty here, baby, there's no such thing as blending in here. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be funny because I'm not trying to be funny, but you've seen some of the dusty, you know, how beat up and dusty some people are looking. If you
Okay, so I had to stop this moment really quick because I listened to it and I was like, it should be fine. People will understand. But I think that sometimes with these videos, especially when it is diasporans talking about Ghana or Africa, I think that there is a certain level of sensitivity that we do have to have, especially with the language that we use. So I did want to at least acknowledge this particular comment because I do know how it sounds coming from somebody who is lighter skinned, somebody who is a woman, speaking about the context of how they feel about women or men or whatever the case may be, however they keep up with themselves. I do want to add a little bit of context because she is going to go on further and I want her to also be able to speak for herself. But I just wanted to pop in and be like, I caught that. However, I do not necessarily think that it was said in a malicious way or an extremely negative way. I just think that sometimes I know that Black Americans, the language that we use, our colloquialisms that we use sometimes can be taken the other way and can be taken as bullying or all those other things. And I just don't really want to like even allow that to even permeate. I think that this particular comment, though, is something that I want to dive deeper into a conversation of and possibly a panel conversation. So I'm not going to say too much on how I feel about it because this is something that I want to dive deeper into in terms of desirability. So I just want to, for now, acknowledge it and let it be.
you're attractive, you're instantly going to be noticed. It's just what it is. So on top of that, you're an American. You have the potential to get me to America. I'm going to attach myself like a leech, parasitically, whatever way I can attach myself to you, and I'm going to follow you around. And part of that biggest challenge is I didn't realize until I didn't have a car anymore how people are able to track you so well because having a car gives you a barrier between all of these people.
having a car, the only way they had access to you is when you got out the car, getting to from point A to point B. So unless they were actually at physically A or B, they had no access to you in between. Right. But now that I'm commuting and I'm walking and doing all this up and down, you got people that know me from here, there. I had a guy the other day say to me about a month ago, I got into a Pragya, sat down, and I was tired as hell coming from my shop. This fool says to me, I see that you opened up the shop. I have no idea who that guy was. And the spirit told me to get out, but I was so tired. You know what I'm saying? Like all jokes, I don't know. Where, like I said, where I'm from, we have issues, you know, my aggression levels, but I have no idea who this guy was. So how are they able to track who you are, know everywhere you're going, know who it? People won't, unless they're on the ground, they will never believe the nonsense that you go through just in everyday commuting here. Because a foreigner, everybody knows who you are. They know where you live, they know where you work, and they call it con comme ça, which is gossip. They gossip all day long. They have nothing else better to do but to talk about what outfit you were wearing, who you were seen with, all day long. And it's unfortunate, but single Black women, you choosing to be single, everybody's trying to love bomb you and tell you something so they can so they can get to America by any means necessary.